Hello, I'm Dr. Victor Chen. Today's topic is God's battle plan against cancer. So let's learn about cancer, how to reduce the risk before it steals, kills, and destroys. So this is the second video in a series of God's battle plan. We've recorded God's battle plan against cardiovascular disease. You can find it in my YouTube channel. So today is God's battle plan against cancer. I'm sure you all have had friends or relatives who had succumbed to cancer, right? Because the lifetime risk of cancer, 1 in 4 person will be afflicted by cancer during their lifetime. Say in a church of 1,000 people, 250 will be afflicted by cancer. Whether they die from the cancer is another matter, right? Because you may get cancer, but you may subsequently die of cardiovascular disease before succumbing to the cancer. So what are the most frequent or most common cancers in Malaysia and Singapore? In men, it's the lung cancer, nasopharynx, like the throat, like Lee Chong Wei, nasopharyngeal cancer, colon, leukemias, rectum, and prostate. In women, breast, cervical cancer, colon cancer, the ovarian cancer, leukemias, and the lung. Study illuminates biblical truth. A study by the American Cancer Society found that 40% of all cancers and nearly half of all cancer deaths can be prevented through lifestyle changes. I mean, this is a big study, of about 1.781 million people, and the authors found that 18 modifiable risk factors. I mean, modifiable means you can control, you can change, were linked to 713,000 out of 1.78 million of all cancers, had these modifiable risk factors which could have prevented cancer. And 262,000 out of 595,000 of all cancer deaths in a study published in 2019. This is the study you can find on the internet, entitled Proportion and Number of Cancer Cases and Deaths Attributable to Potentially Modified Risk Factors in the United States in 2019. And what are the modifiable risk factors that are listed in this study? Cigarette smoking, current smoker, or a former smoker. So even you've given up, those exposure to the nicotine and the toxins will catch up with you. Secondhand smoke, passive smoking, excess body weight, alcohol consumption of red and processed meat, red meat and processed meat, low consumption of fruit, vegetables, dietary fiber and dietary calcium, physical inactivity, ultraviolet radiation exposure, and there are 7 carcinogenic infections, which I will share on some of them later. In this study, they found that smoking was the main culprit. Cigarette smoking had the largest proportion of cancer cases, accounting for 19.3% of all cases, of cancer in this study, as well as 56% of all potentially preventable cancers in male and 39.9% in females. After smoking, the second culprit is excess body weight, had the largest population attributable fraction of 7.6%. Third culprit, alcohol consumption. Fourth, UV radiation exposure. Fifth, physical inactivity. So get off your butt and move and do some exercise. So science is revealing that by living God's original health plan is the best way to prevent cancer. God's original health plan. Well, don't smoke, because why? I mean, the Bible doesn't explicitly say smoking is a sin, but we are the temple of the Holy Spirit, so don't pollute God's temple. Don't drink excessively. Maintain a healthy body weight. Eat whole food and plant-based diets, Whole food, not processed food. And get plenty of exercise. In the Garden of Eden, we find God's health plan in the very first chapters of the Bible. Our Creator placed the first two humans, Adam and Eve, in a garden where they would naturally get physical activity. So gardening is good. Get fresh air and sunshine, okay, pristine environment, not polluted, as they cared for the plants that provided them with food. He also provided them with the perfect diet. I've given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed, to you it shall be for food. Then harmful fertilizers, pesticides, additive substances were unknown, right? Daily and weekly rest were built into the rhythm of their lives. God's initial plan, I believe it was more for men to be a herbivore than a carnivore, okay, to eat more vegetables. And God said, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on all the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruits yield seed, to you it shall be for food. And also every beast on the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food. I mean, two of the strongest animals in the world, like the gorilla and the elephant, they are vegetarians, right? And in Isaiah 11:7, even suggests when Jesus comes and reigns in his millennial kingdom, the cow will feed with the bear, the young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. You know, it's indicating that when Jesus returned to rule, that we will be vegetarians again. What is cancer? Cancer is a proliferation of cells whose unique trait, that means a liver cell doesn't look like a liver cell anymore, right? Loss of normal control mechanisms results in unregulated growth. That means the control mechanisms regarding its division, multiplication, is lost, okay? Results in unregulated growth, lack of differentiation, and when liver cell doesn't look like a liver cell compared, it can't differentiate from other cells, local tissue invasion, and metastasis. I mean, it's gone somewhere else, okay, to another organ or another tissue. Characteristics of cancer: it can develop in any tissue of any organ at any age. Develops by a process called transformation. Basically, initiation, a change in a cell's genetic material, primes the cell to be cancerous. It's just like your computer, or once the virus hits your computer, then it can become cancerous. And then what does it do? It promotes, the initiated cell develops into a cancer. It proliferates, spreads, just like a virus hits your computer, mess up your computer, and then send all those different lousy messages to all your friends, unsuspectingly. Okay, this is Gompertzian model of cancer growth. I mean, cancer doesn't occur overnight. Mutations take some time, over years of insults to the DNA, the genetic material, it mutates. Then a few cancer cells will form. I mean, every day, 4,000 to 5,000 cancer cells forms in our body. Just like we have a strong immune system, we are able to check the cancer cells from causing more damage, right? So it takes time until it gets a certain size, then when you can diagnose it, right? This is during our grandfather's time. Like for instance, birth of the tumor growth, then there's a detection limit. This from birth, start of the cancer to it being detected, causing problems, it could be 10, 20 years. But in my grandfather's days, we detected quite late. But these days, with modern biomedical technology, we can detect it very, very, very early. Okay, before we talk about how cancer initiates, we have to talk about oncogenes. Certain genetic loci, certain locations in the genome, in the chromosomes, may predispose to cancer. These oncogenes remain suppressed until an environmental trigger factor causes the expression of cancer proteins. Once the oncogene is expressed, cancer will then can develop. Okay, here's your proto-oncogene that God has put in all of us. And it serves a purpose. I'll explain in the next slide. But because we are exposed to cancer-causing agents like ultraviolet light, chemicals, carcinogenic virus. This can activate the oncogene and become a cancerous phenotype. Okay, let me explain. See, these proto-oncogenes are there for a good reason. God put them there. These are the genes that regulate cell division. Because why? Our cells are multiplying, they're dividing to replace the worn out cells, right? But when these proto-oncogene is mutated to become an oncogene, right? Mutated or overexpressed, then we get unregulated cell division, right? Leading to a tumor formation. The cause of cancer, the exact cause of most cancers are unknown, but it involves initial mutation of the genetic material. This causes tumor to grow and it becomes independent of surrounding growth inhibitors or growth factors. Why do genes mutate? Well, the Bible describes the current world as failing or in a state of decay or bondage to corruption due to sin, but offers hope through the promise of a new creation. You know, God's new world where there's no death, no pain, no tears, right? This decay is physical and also spiritual and moral. I mean, we see it in the world today, right? Our old people are dying. Even the young ones are struck down by accidents and disease, right? The world is polluted spiritually and morally. With the world described as passing away while God's kingdom is eternal. That creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. Okay, that's the promise we have. Mutations are viewed as part of futility or decay that entered the world after Adam's disobedience. Second law of thermodynamics. Things fall apart. I mean, they often do. The new car you buy will be rusty down the road. The new clothes you buy will also be teetered, also will fall apart. It's a second law of thermodynamics. All closed systems move towards entropy. That means disorder, meaning they move towards disorder. They move from a high energy state to a low energy state, right? It's oxidation, etc. explains everything. Trees grow old and they die, falling apart in decay, feeding other organisms. Stars form. They form supernova that explode into billions of particles shooting out into the void. Why? Because in doing so, it goes from a high energy state to a lower energy state. That's second law of thermodynamics. Even our bedrooms tend towards disarray. Leave them alone for a month, a year, and you see what kind of mold grows on your walls, right? The world is increasingly becoming disordered. The universe expands and unravels without any help at all. And what are we to do? See, if you go to there's a space station right in the US, there's a big giant telescope that look at the universe. It's ever expanding. And it fits in with the second law of thermodynamics. Why? When you have more space, the energy will dissipate into the universe because the energy will become dispersed, right? So from a higher energy state to a lower energy state, that's the second law of thermodynamics, where all systems move towards entropy, meaning they move towards disorder. Bible and the second law of thermodynamics. The Bible aligns with the second law of thermodynamics, which states that systems naturally decay, lose energy, and move towards disorder by describing a universe that is wearing out or running down. Okay, key verses often cited include Psalms 102, Hebrews 1 verse 10 to 11, and Romans 8 20, 22, which portray the creation as subject to entropy, decay, and corruption. Okay, Psalms 102 and Hebrews, these passages explicitly state that the heavens are the works of your hand, but they will perish. We know this world will perish, and all will grow old like a garment, like the clothes you buy. Romans 8, chapter 8, verse 20 to 22 describes the creation as being subject to futility or bondage of corruption, which theologians interpret as the introduction of decay. And Genesis chapter 3, verse 19, the curse following Adam's disobedience is interpreted as the introduction of decay and disorder into a previously perfect system. I have another presentation, is God's plan to boost our immunity, so that will be a later topic. But our immunity against cancer is basically the cell-mediated immunity. Our immune system, there's several types. There's the one with no memory, innate, like our normal first line of defense. And the one with memory is cell-mediated immunity or antibody-mediated immunity. But the one that deals with cancer is a cell-mediated immunity. Okay, so I won't go too much into it, but we need a strong immune system to prevent against diseases and against foreign invaders and even local invaders like cancer cells. Okay, so the T killer cell, T helper cell, they all work together to kill off the cancer cells. The immune system will detect abnormal cells, cancerous or mutated cells, and destroy them before they become full-blown cancer. So a strong immune system is vital to check for mutated cells, which I'll deal with God's plan to boost our immune system in another presentation. How does cancer kill a person? Well, nutritional. It grows rapidly and competes for nutrition. Because a cancer cell grows so much faster than a normal cell, right? Obviously, it needs more nutrition. That's why people with cancer, they are like cactic, okay? They need more nutrition. Toxins will secrete toxins and kill the normal cells or its function. Myelosuppression. For instance, leukemia can depress the bone marrow, leading to infections and bleeding. Because why? Your bone marrow forms the white blood cells, okay, platelets. So if it's just producing cancer cells and not producing white blood cells, that means you're more prone to infections. If you cannot produce platelets, you will bleed more easily, right? Complications can rupture, it can bleed, right? Okay, it can compress, like if it's a brain tumor, it can compress there, okay, and lead to neurological problems. What are some risk factors for cancer? Family history, certainly. Chromosomal abnormalities. Smoking. Ultraviolet and ionizing radiation. Our diet. Certain chemicals like asbestos. Hormones. And some carcinogenic viruses. Chronic epithelial irritation. I mean, those, I think the Indians, they bite on that nut with the lime, that causes a lot of oral cancer. Preventable risk factors, one, diet. 1/3 of cancers can be prevented by a proper diet and regular exercise. Okay, diet. Remember in that study by the American Cancer Society, they said processed meat, red meat are high risk for cancer. Well, animal proteins and saturated fats are linked to cancers of the colon, rectum, pancreas, kidney, breast, uterus, and prostate. So meat, red meat, try to eat more lean white meat. And even if you want to have red meat, choose the leanest cut. Animal fat and cholesterol, when they are oxidized, they become rancid and are toxic to our cells. Red meat is high in cholesterol. Cholesterol is the precursors of hormones that could promote the growth of hormone-dependent cancers like breast and prostatic cancer. High red meat eaters have 3 times the incidence of prostatic cancer and 2 times the incidence of breast cancer. Okay, what is a hormone? Since we're talking about hormone-dependent cancers like breast cancer and prostatic cancer. Okay, they basically all starts with a cholesterol molecule. You need cholesterol to make hormones. You also need cholesterol to make vitamin D, etc., etc. This cholesterol is then converted to a compound called androstenedione. And the compound androstenedione is converted to the male hormone, testosterone, or to the female hormones, estradiol, okay, by these pathways. So it's important for men, like in 50s, to go for yearly testosterone tests to make sure you have enough testosterone. For male organ functions, to make sure your bone doesn't become osteoporotic, to maintain muscle mass, you need testosterone. And yeah, I go for yearly testosterone tests and always been high. And if you have high female hormones in male, we can take aromatase inhibitors, right, to prevent it from converting from androstenedione or testosterone into the female hormones. Thereby, when you take the aromatase inhibitors for 6 weeks, your testosterone level will also go up. Steps to prevent dietary-related cancers. Eat a healthy, balanced diet with an increased intake of antioxidants. Where are antioxidants found? Plants and vegetables. And if you don't eat enough of them, then you should supplement with extra antioxidants. Plant food is rich in antioxidants and are essential for the fight against cancer. The Singapore Chinese Health Study, a landmark 10-year study of more than 60,000 people, showed that eating green, leafy, and cruciferous vegetables like kailan, choy sam, broccoli, and cauliflower may reduce the risk of colon cancer, and yellowish-orange fruits like papaya and tangerines may reduce the risk of lung cancer. So we should eat 5 to 8 servings of fruits, vegetables a day, as recommended by most, if not all, dietitians. You've probably heard this before, right? Eating cruciferous vegetables is good against cancer, right? Cruciferous like broccoli, cauliflower. Because why? Cruciferous vegetables contain a compound called sulforaphane. It's a potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory compound, right? Found in like broccoli, kale, cabbage, sprouts, okay? It exhibits strong anti-cancer properties by inducing phase 2 detoxification enzymes, promoting cancer cell apoptosis. It means telling the cancer cells to die, okay, because they forget to die. Inhibiting tumor growth and suppressing angiogenesis. How does cancer spread? By forming new blood vessels. So it inhibits the cancer cells by forming blood vessels, right? So it doesn't spread. So, okay, researchers have praised this compound in broccoli for cancer prevention, basically sulforaphane. You can even get it as a supplement these days, right? And who should be taking it? Those who smoke, those who faces secondary smoke, or those who live near to a petrol station, right? Because all the benzines and all that can give you lung cancer. This will prevent it to some extent. And it will prevent you from basically air pollution, right? Which can cause a lot of problems like cancer, emphysema, and lung problems. Okay, the Daniel fast, Daniel chapter 1, verse 12 to 15. You don't have to be going to a 5-star hotel to eat tai ha, tai yuk every day, right? To be healthy. And Daniel, they were captured in Babylon and they were allowed to eat the king's delicacies, but no, he and his friends didn't want to and requested to eat only vegetables and drink water. So please test your servants for 10 days and give us, he and his friends, only vegetables and water to drink. Then let our appearance be examined before you and the appearance of the young men who eat all the king's delicacies. And as you see fit, so deal with your servants. So he was allowed to just eat fruits and vegetables and water and not eat the king's delicacies. And at the end of 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of king's delicacies. So there you go. Vegetables, vegetarians, etc. It's more healthier than all those meats. Steps to prevent dietary-related cancer. Limit fat intake, especially saturated fats. Diets low in saturated fats has shown to lower colorectal and prostatic cancer. Avoid aged foods, okay, and especially overnight food, right? Animal products containing cholesterol or fats. Aged, stock, scrambled, mixed or whipped food contain increased amount of oxidized fat and cholesterol molecules, which can be carcinogenic. Replace good fats with bad fats with good ones. Okay, it's not overnight. You just, it's gradual. Too sudden of a change in dietary habits, it's not sustainable. So it's slowly, okay? Like processed snacks, instead of processed snacks, you take nuts. Ground beef, you can take tofu. Steak, you can take, which is red meat. You can take salmon or chicken. Right? Baking, butter, you can use avocado, etc. Butter, you can use olive oil. Okay, second preventable risk factor, obesity and inactivity, which was basically mentioned in that American Cancer Society study, right, as a modifier risk factor. It's estimated that up to 16% of all cancer deaths are linked to excess body weight. Obesity and inactivity increases risk of colon cancer, breast cancer, endometrial cancer, kidney cancer, and cancer of the esophagus. 10% weight loss reduces the risk of cancer-related deaths by 40 to 50%. This is medically proven fact and not just a wish list or a made-up statement. So, try to reduce your weight with dietary means, and exercises reduces body weight by burning up the calories and also promotes sweating to rid the body of accumulated cancerous toxins. Okay, what can you do to lose weight? You can try a low-caloric diet. Basically, you need to be in a caloric deficit. If you are burning 2,000 calories a day and you do a 500 caloric deficit diet a day, that means you only eat 1,005, but you burn 2,000 a day. So over 1 week, 7 days, you are in caloric deficit of 3,500 calories. 3,500 calories equal to 1 pound. Yeah. So if you go a caloric deficit of 500 calories per day, over 1 week, you just lose 1 pound. You can try other things like intermittent fasting, OMAD, 1 meal a day. Exercise is very important to burn fat. Preventable or modifiable risk factor, number 3, is smoking. Remember in that American Cancer Society study, smoking is the main culprit. Smokers account for 87% of lung cancer deaths. Smoking and cancer. Various carcinogens in the smoke such as tar and nicotine. Tobacco smoke also suppresses natural killer cell activity, okay, which is part of your immune system that repels cancer. So the smoke will also suppress your immunity. Smoking is associated with more than just lung cancer. It's associated with also oral cancer, esophageal cancer, laryngeal cancer, colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, cervical cancer, stomach cancer, liver cancer, prostate cancer, and cancer of the bladder and kidneys. Steps to prevent tobacco-related cancer: quit smoking, avoid secondary smoke, and take antioxidants and keep the immune system strong. Antioxidants like sulforaphane, for instance. Okay, risk factor 4, certain bacteria and viruses. About 10 to 15% of cancer deaths could be linked to viruses. Like the human papilloma virus, HPV, is associated with cervical cancer. You can go for a pap smear, etc. You can see any changes. 80% of liver cancers may be caused by hepatitis B virus. The Epstein-Barr virus is linked to nasopharyngeal cancers and lymphomas, okay, which are cancer of the lymphatic system. Okay, there's a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori, which most of you have heard by now. It's a bacteria that causes peptic ulcers in the stomach, okay, and is classified by the World Health Organization as a class 1 definitive carcinogen. So if you have this bacteria, you can take, 2 antibiotics and a proton pump inhibitor over a week to get rid of this bacteria. Steps to prevent pathogen-related cancers. If at risk of stomach cancer, family history, or symptomatic, you can test for that bacteria, okay, which you can treat. You can treat it as an infection to get rid of that bacteria. Go for regular pap smear if sexually active. Also test for the HPV virus, and if you're a teenager, you can vaccinate it. You can get a vaccine for human papilloma virus. Risk factor 5, stress. Stress is not just a mental state, okay? It's like, oh, I'm stressed. No. Because why? The adrenal glands release cortisol, which suppresses the immune system. When if you're constantly stressed, your immune system is constantly suppressed, and you can get diseases and can lead to cancer. That's why a lot of people who lose their job or financial problem, they are stressed, and few years down the road they develop and die from cancer. This can lead to initial cancer cells going unchecked and proliferating. Okay, fight or flight reaction. When you are stressed, right, it's good because why? In ancient days, you see a tiger, you either fight the tiger or you flight, you run away, right? Called the fight or flight reaction. The release of hormones in stressful situations is called the fight or flight reactions. In the past, our ancestors, when confronted by a wild animal or enemy, they would either fight or flight. Perils of chronic adrenaline release. But these days, these hormones are released. Adrenaline is, you're constantly stressed. The adrenaline is also being constantly released. It leads to what? High blood pressure, anxiety, palpitations, neck pain, back pain, headache, muscle tension. And what's worse, it can lead to cancer. The perils of chronic cortisol release. Increases the level of glucose in your blood, which is no good. Can lead to type 2 diabetes. And what's worse, it suppresses your immune system and make your body more prone to infections and cancer. There you go, stress in your brain releases cortisol and it suppresses your immune system. How to manage your stress before your stress manages you, right? It's no one size fit all. Some will just go for meditation, some will go for sports, some will go for alcohol, it depends, right? So, but there are obviously Christian ways to manage stress, where meditation is focusing not on yourself but on God. Okay, biblical stress relief. Philippians chapter 4 verse 6 to 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving present your requests to God, and the peace of God which transcends all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So everything, just look towards God and believe He has all the best things ahead of you. Everything works out for the best for those who love Him. Matthew chapter 11 verse 28 to 30. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. So rest in Jesus. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 7. Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. So every time you pray, you move the heart of God, and surely He is listening to you. Exercise. When you think hard, the neurons of your brain function more intensely. As they do, they build up toxic waste products, cause foggy thinking in the short term, and can damage the brain in the long term. By exercising, you speed the flow of blood through your brain. Moving these waste products faster, you also improve the blood flow so that even when you're not exercising, waste is eliminated more efficiently. It can cause release of chemicals called endorphins into your bloodstream. These give you a feeling of happiness and well-being. So it's good to exercise when you're stressed. It takes your mind off things. It's easy. Go for some sports. I know pickleball is an in thing, but now I'm into high rocks. Right? So I go twice a week for training. Okay, signs and symptoms of cancer. Clinical features of cancer. Obviously, it depends on the site of the cancer, right? Where the cancer is. Generally, patients manifest with progressive weight loss, anorexia, and weakness. If for whatever lose weight technique, if you lose weight too fast, people will say, hey, anything wrong with you? Because cancer patients lose weight. For bulky tumors, there's a rapid increase in the size of the lesion. There's some cancers like breast cancer, which is palpable. Epithelial lesions usually fungate, ulcerate, bleed, and invade adjacent tissues like stomach cancer, colon and rectal cancer. You may find blood in your stools. And tumors inside the body can cause compression symptoms like those in the brain. Early warning signs of cancer. Changes in bowel or bladder habits, right? Maybe constipated. being a sore that does not heal, unusual bleeding or discharge, thickening or lump in the breast or elsewhere, indigestion or difficulty in swallowing, especially with those nasopharyngeal cancers, oral cancers, obvious change in a wart or mole, a nagging hoarseness, unexplained cough, right, with the throat cancers, and definitely sudden unexplained weight loss. So what are some diagnostic tests we can do for cancer to pick up cancer? Screening tests like a pap smear for cervical cancer. Once you become sexually active, you should test it regularly. Fecal or blood, okay, for colon cancer. We test for blood in your stools. Mammogram for ladies. This is a test we do in one of our clinics. It's called a pre-PET CTC. Okay, this is basically a report. Okay, you find in this one, in 2 meals, we found 11 CHC, which I'll explain what they are. Okay, so this is CTC, circulating tumor cells. It's just basically detecting early cancer cells formation in circulating in the blood. Circulating tumor cells, CTC, and circulating heteromorphic cells. What are they? Basically, okay, circulating tumor cells provide blood biomarker for early carcinogenesis, cancer progression, and treatment effectiveness. An increase in CTC is associated with cancer progression, a CTC decrease with cancer containment or remission. What it is a blood test that tests in the blood for cancer cells that are detached from the primary tumor. Meaning, you have a tumor cancer somewhere in the body, not sure yet where, right? So you take a blood test to detect for these cancer cells that have dropped off and circulating in the blood, right? That's called CTC, circulating tumor cells. Circulating heteromorphic cells are similar, a heterogeneous population of tumor-derived cells found in the peripheral blood of cancer patients. So these are early cancer detection tests that we do in our clinic. Tumor markers, PSA, okay, for prostate cancer, but even if you have benign prostatic hyperplasia and large prostate also, your PSA will go up. And what are good supplements for prostate cancer? Lycopene and selenium. Okay, people with prostate cancer have lower level of selenium. CEA is a blood test for tumor marker for colorectal cancer. And CA125 for ovarian cancers. Other tests includes biopsy for histological diagnosis. So you do a fine needle aspirate into the breast. Okay, then you put it under a frozen section and to test whether it's cancer or not, right? Colon, the same thing. You can do X-ray, CT, MRI. Well, it's called basically imaging, right? For staging of the cancer. Staging of cancer. You know, like I won't go into too deep. You know, probably when someone has cancer, you heard a friend has cancer, then you ask, oh, what stage? You know, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, right? Stage 4 meaning that it's very 糟糕 already, very spread everywhere. Stage 1 still can rescue because it's contained, right? Okay, so basically, that's why it's important they do the MRI, the CT, all that, is to stage, okay? Then they have tumor node, NMN classification, okay, tumor size, node involvement, whether it's involved any nodes, and whether it's metastasized. So cancer staging gives a good idea of prognosis. Staging guides the physician on the treatment options for the patient, okay? So I won't go into it. Early stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Stage 4 is distant spread. And these days, imaging is very advanced. We can image it from the morphology, what it looks like, to its metabolism, to the molecular level, okay? For instance, imaging the tumor at the molecular level, we can see whether blood vessels are forming, right? And other matrix molecules being formed. Common questions in oncology imaging. Is cancer present in the first place? What is the extent? How aggressive is the cancer? What is the best therapy? Is the therapy working? Okay, you look for whether it's remission or recurrence or it's progressively worse. Okay, And this is where PET and CT both excel. Yeah, you can even precisely see which lymph nodes are involved these days by imaging. Okay, tumor imaging, targeting neoangiogenesis. Okay, we know aggressive malignant tumors can form new blood vessels, right? Characteristic of solid tumors and metastasis. They form new blood vessels, so then they can migrate and metastasize. Okay, and just imaging after IV administration. Why? This blood vessel formation is correlated with tumor aggressiveness, stage of disease, and prognosis of the patient. If there are new aggressive blood vessel formation, by the cancer cells, the tumor, obviously the prognosis is going to be worse. Factors affecting the prognosis of cancer. Obviously, early diagnosis is more favorable. Stage of the disease, stage 1, 2, 3, 4. Extent of metastasis at the time of diagnosis, whether it's spread or not. Histological grade at the time of diagnosis. Age at the time of diagnosis, because why? Your general health, your general resistance will be poorer as you age. Psychological factors such as the patient's mental attitude, the will to survive. Cancer treatments include surgery, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, immunotherapy, hormonal therapy, and gene therapy, which I will dwell into later. Surgery, the primary goal is to resect or remove the lesion, the cancer. An outcome of surgery depends on the patient's preoperative status, extent of the tumor, and kind of cancer, whether it's aggressive cancer or not. It may involve certain risks related to the procedure, bleeding, infection, anesthetic administration, and may be combined with other modalities of treatment. It usually is. Chemotherapy interferes with the reproduction of cancer cells, inhibits phases of the cancer cells so it doesn't divide and continue multiplying, aims to maximize toxicity to tumor cells while minimizing the effect on non-cancer cells. You don't want to destroy the normal cells, right? You just want to destroy the cancer cells. But obviously, some normal cells will be affected. That's why you get side effects, balding, etc. I'm not on chemotherapy. I just had a shaved. Side effects include vomiting, alopecia, hair loss, general body weakness, and may limit the use of these agents. Commonly causes myelosuppression. Suppress your bone marrow from forming white blood cells, platelets, etc., and GI side effects. And it can be administered by a variety of ways, orally or intravenously. But how do you know which chemotherapy works better for? This is an OncoPDO. How does this OncoPDO test work? Is that your tumor cells will grow into a mini organ in a three-dimensional culture called PDO, patient-derived organoids. That means they take tumor cells from your cancer cells, your tumor, they take the cells, then they form an organoid. This called PDO, patient-derived organoid. The chemotherapeutic drugs selected by your oncologist will be tested on your individual mini organ, in the lab. So they will form an organoid using your cancer cells, and they'll test all the different chemotherapy to see which one is more effective, right? Then the doctor can choose the best chemotherapy for you. The response of each individual treatment will be analyzed, and the report will be provided to your oncologist in a clinically relevant time frame. Radiation therapy or radiotherapy. Radiation damages the DNA of cancer cells, thereby killing them. Unfortunately, normal tissues are also destroyed. You have a nasopharyngeal cancer, it may destroy your salivary glands, your nerves in the process. May be used in combination with other modalities like chemotherapy. Radiotherapy may also be used in certain inoperable tumors. Skin burns are common side effects but may be minimized using a linear immunotherapy. is use of substances made by the body or in a laboratory to boost the immune system and help the body find and destroy cancer. Okay, find and destroy. May be used in combination with other treatment modalities. Immunotherapy. Monoclonal antibodies. Antibodies made in a lab to fight cancer. Cytokines, interferons, and interleukins to boost up your cell-mediated immunity to fight cancer. Oncologic virus therapy is use of virus that has been modified in a lab to destroy cancer. NK cells or CAR-NK or CAR-T, chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy is a way to get immune cells called T cells, a white blood cell from your own blood to fight cancer by changing them in a lab so they can find and destroy cancer cells. Basically, they take the T cells from your blood, it's an immune cell. In a lab, they train it to fight that particular cancer you are fighting, you have, right? Then they attach chimeric antigen receptor to your T cells. So when you inject back the T cells that has been treated in a lab to fight that cancer, that particular cancer, inject it in, and they'll stick around and fight that cancer for you. They will recognize that cancer more easily and fight it.
The immune system defends the body against disease. T cells are one of its key soldiers, targeting infected or abnormal cells. But cancer can block those defenses. Now scientists are genetically engineering patients' own T cells to make them smarter and tougher at seeking out and destroying cancer. One version is called CAR T cell therapy. T cells customized to zero in on a patient's specific kind of cancer. It all starts when a patient's blood is filtered through a machine that separates T cells and other white blood cells from the rest. Scientists mix the collected T cells with a virus that has been disabled so it won't cause illness. Instead, that virus carries genetic instructions for the T cells to grow an artificial receptor called a chimeric antigen receptor, or CAR, that will track its cancer target and rev up for an attack. Millions of copies of those engineered cells are grown in a laboratory and given back to the patient intravenously. The first CAR T cells are being tested against types of leukemia and lymphoma that bear a marker, or antigen, named CD19. Once in the bloodstream, those CAR T cells home in on that antigen and grab hold. They release toxic chemicals that trigger a cancer cell's death. As one cancer cell dies, CAR T cells move on to the next, multiplying in the patient's blood until they're no longer needed.
Hormone therapy, useful in hormone-dependent tumors like breast cancer and prostatic cancer. Hormone antagonists like cytochrome acetate can be used for prostatic cancer. And breast cancer, the breast cancer tissue, they will test it to see whether it's estrogen receptor positive or not. If it's estrogen receptor positive, they can possibly give you tamoxifen for your breast cancer. Gene therapy. In our body, there are oncogenic genes like RS, SRC, ERB, MYC, and you need some of these genes. Why? Because they're meant to help cell division, right? Regulated cell division, normal. But it can go wrong, which I mentioned earlier, right? But God, in His all wisdom, has also put in cancer suppressor genes like P53, P21, Wilks1 tumor, and retinoblastoma tumor. Okay, so it's like a yin and yang. It's to balance each other. These oncogenic genes is accelerate cell division. These cancer suppressor genes like P53 is to like a car brake, right? So God is all infinite wisdom has made us wonderfully and perfectly. But sometimes the balance can go wrong and genes can be abnormal. Why? Because of the external factors, diet, pollution, ultraviolet radiation, which upset the balance. Internal, hereditary, and then the older we live, there's more cell divisions, and the more you divide, the more chance for aberrations and abnormality, isn't it? People used to live to 60, 70, now living to 90, 100. So there's more cell division, and more cell division, you're more prone to mutations and aberrations. And some viruses insert into the genes, into the human genes, and thereby induce tumors like those virus we mentioned about, right, earlier. And the car handbrake, the tumor suppressor genes, sometimes they stop working for reasons which I'll explain later, right? This is your chromosomes, half from your mom, half from your dad, and there are tumor suppressor genes inserted there to make sure you don't develop tumors. But if you have ultraviolet radiation, one doesn't work, but overall it still works because it's autosomal recessive, like the P53. But if you get a second hit, then there's no car handbrake anymore. There's no car brakes anymore. Then the tumors can just keep growing and growing without any handbrake or car brake. Okay, see, here's primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention of cancer. Remember, I mentioned that my grandfather's time is only when you see the lesion detectable, got symptoms, then only you can treat the cancer or prevent the cancer or whatever. That's called tertiary prevention. That's usually already symptomatic down here and it is spread. Then remember when I mentioned earlier, you do the test for cancer cells, circulating tumor cells, circulating heteromorphic cells, early detection of cancer circulating in your blood, okay? That's in this secondary prevention phase, right? Where you have your immune system. Every day you produce 4,000 to 6,000 cancer cells, but your immune system, NK cells and all that will mop it up. But with gene therapy, we can even do it earlier, before it even form one single cancer cell, right? That's where it's called primary prevention. That's where gene therapy is so advanced now, it can prevent cancer and treat cancer. We can detect it early. And the most important defense against cancer, genetic, is the P53 gene. It's called the guardian of the genome. What it means is that when cells are multiplying, before it's allowed to divide, you go and check, make sure the DNA is okay. It's not mutated. If it's mutated, stop dividing, right? It's the guardian of the genome. It's like the quality control of the cell manufacturing in our body. P53 is the most important genetic defense against cancer at a genetic level. It's the most studied gene of all the top 10 genes that's been studied and cited in medical and scientific journals. Kumar says, this publication says P53 regulates thousands of genes and its pathway has remained unchanged throughout billions of years of evolution. Okay, so it's the most important gene that regulates our body and the processes in the body. What is P53 gene? It has 4 major functions: monitor cellular damage, freeze the cell cycle, repair the cells, damaged cells, and cause apoptosis of tumor cells. And I'll explain it in the next slide. Okay, this is the cell cycle. I mean, our cells cannot be multiplying and dividing 24 hours, right? Even a factory kilang needs rest, right? Same with our cell cycle, our cells. Okay, GO means nothing's happening. It's static. G1 phase of the cell cycle is when it accumulate proteins for DNA replication. I mean, one cell become 2, right? Same size, same function. So it need double of everything. So you need to accumulate proteins to make another set of DNA. Then the S phase is when it replicates the DNA. G2 phase is when it accumulates proteins for cell division, right? I mean, proteins and etc. lipids. Because why? One cell become 2, same size, same function, you need double of cell membrane, double of proteins inside, right? Okay, so what P53 does is that it allows the cell cycle to go through G1 to S. But at G1, it says, hey, it's a guardian of the genome. It makes sure that the DNA is not mutated. The new cell that it makes, the DNA is should be normal, right? If the original cell, the DNA is mutated, then the P53 says, stop going to the S phase. Then then it will get enzymes to repair the DNA. If it's repairable, then it will go to the S and G2 phase. If it's not repairable, then it will ask the cell to die, suicide. Okay, that's the function of P53. I'll explain again in the next slide. There you go. P53 is the guardian of the genome. It should be functioning properly. Of course, there are various reasons why the P53 doesn't work. I'll explain it to you. Due to pollution, due to COVID, due to the COVID vaccine, will make P53 non-functioning, and that's bad because when it doesn't function, tumors can arise. Okay, this is the cell cycle which P53 regulates. It finds DNA has already mutated. It will ask for DNA, the enzymes to repair the DNA. It will just freeze that cell cycle. Then it repairs the DNA. If, that's called cell cycle arrest. If the DNA can be repaired, the cell cycle continues. Then the cell will multiply. But if it cannot be repaired, it will cause autophagy, or ask the cell, that particular cell, to die. It will just switch off the mitochondria of the cell, the energy, the Tenaga Nasional Berhad of the cell, and ask the cell to die. That's the function of P53. This is a follow-up study, 11-year follow-up study on people with Li-Fraumeni syndrome. They are born with non-functional, mutated P53. They're born. So by the time they're 20 years old, they probably had 2 or 3 cancers already. Okay, and what it concludes is that these 89 who tested positive for P53 mutation in early screening, the cancer incidence rate among those who refused clinical monitoring was as high as 88%. It just shows that P53, when it doesn't work, it's mutated, you are very high risk of cancer. Okay, this is a study at the 2020 Nature's Review. Says that a mutated tumor P53 gene can lead to more than 50 types of cancer. P53 gene deletion leads to a cancerous phenotype. So on the basis of P53 deficiency, this is published in Nature's 2022, due to genomic instability and progressive loss of control, cancer eventually develops, and this pattern is predictable, orderly, and deterministic. Okay, this is a publication in China. Okay, among over 10,000 cancer patients, the mutation rate of P53 was about 60%. That means in these 10,194 cancer patients, 60% had a non-functional P53. Is P53 the God-given gene to prevent cancer? I believe so. The International Agency for Research on Cancer of the World Health Organization states that the development of cancer requires a fundamental condition, namely the inactivation of the P53 gene. If the P53 gene functions normally, cancer will not develop. So the reason why cancer can develop is because your P53 gene is not functioning. So all individuals aged 30 and above should undergo testing for the health status of the P53 anti-cancer gene. And this is a study by a very renowned scientist. You can go to his YouTube, Marigonomics, and cancer types post-mRNA vaccines like the Pfizer vaccines. Because why? After taking the mRNA vaccine like the Pfizer's one, there are a lot of cases of sudden death, complications, cancers, various types of cancers. And this is a particular video which he reviewed, a case report of acute lymphoblastic leukemia, lymphoblastic lymphoma, following a second dose of Comirnaty, basically the Pfizer vaccine for COVID, an analysis of the potential pathogenic mechanisms based on existing literature, why they develop cancers, and more or less immediately, quite soon after the vaccination. And he postulates it's because of the inactivation of the P53 gene, suppressed cancer gene, anti-cancer gene.
So there is clearly some background information. This is probably the best review I've seen summarizing all of this, which is why I wanted to bring this to your attention. But how the authors finalized this was basically giving us suggestions as to what might be causing all of these. Why are we seeing cancers after vaccination? And by the way, some of these show up very quick, like within few days after vaccination, so very rapid onset. Most of them are de novo, and that means basically there was never a history of any kind. There was no prior cancer. It just shows up out of nowhere type of thing. And so you can see that there's definitely, this suggests that there could be some sort of a causative effect. So now let's talk about the potential causes that the authors proposed, because this was very, very fascinating as well. So number one, they're talking about the potential of vaccines inducing these molecules called PD-1 or PDL1 on the surface of immune cells. PD-1 stands for programmed death 1. I talked about this extensively now in multiple videos, but basically when you have these molecules on the surface of your immune cells, it signals these molecules basically to no longer work as effectively, so they're going to be shut off. This is part of what is referred to as the induction of this concept of called T-cell exhaustion. So check out some of the past videos where I've talked about this already as well, and I went deeply into this topic in my turbo cancer videos as well. All right, so that was the first one. The second one was the possibility of the spike protein of interacting with tumor suppressor proteins, so proteins in our body, in our cells, that normally are supposed to make sure that cancers do not develop. Hence, the tumor suppressor. So P53 protein is one of them. BRCA1 is another one, or BRCA2. So these are important proteins in our body that work in such a way to make sure that cancers do not develop. And apparently, spike protein, there is now some supporting evidence that spike protein could be interacting with these proteins and perhaps limiting their proper function, okay?
So, yeah, so the vaccine will inactivate the proper function of our P53 tumor suppressor gene, and thereby cancers can grow unchecked, and tumors can grow unchecked. Thereby, in our clinic in Shanghai and even in Guangzhou, we can do a P53 gene testing to see whether it's functional or not. 6 different locations on your chromosome. And if it's non-functional, then we need to nebulize in the P53 to restore the P53 function and the tumor suppressor gene function in your cells. And what it is, it's a P53 gene attached to a virus to send it to your gene, okay? Because your gene is so small, P53 lagi small. So we need a virus or vector to send in the P53 to replace it with a functional P53 gene. Tumor vaccines. What is a tumor vaccine? A therapeutic cancer vaccine introduces one or more tumor antigens to the immune system and prompt these cells to activate against the antigen, in turn targeting and destroying the tumors. There you go. How it works? Therapeutic vaccines consist of antigen-presenting cells that activate T cells. This becomes a dynamic therapy that can adapt to the tumor. Okay, how is it done? First, antigen preparation. The scientists can produce cancer vaccines against tumors by using the patient's tumor as a source of antigen, or by synthesizing peptides for tumor antigens. We can take your own tumor, I use that as an antigen, right? Then the researchers use different vaccine platforms to deliver the antigens. Patient-derived dendritic cell. So dendritic cell therapy for cancer is something also at the developing field. Adeno-associated viral vectors and lipid nanoparticles. Antigen presentation. Once administered, these antigens eventually find their way to the patient's dendritic cells, or are immediately expressed on dendritic cells if they are used as a vehicle. Look, you use dendritic cells as a vehicle. The dendritic cells travel to the lymph nodes and activate the antigen-specific T cells. Anti-tumor activity. Once activated, these tumors antigen-specific T cells will multiply and travel to the tumor, where they help target the tumor cells. B, okay, for destruction. B, some activated T cells become memory cells, shown in purple. Okay, next slide. These will reside in the lymph nodes or nearby tissue to protect the body against future recurrences of the same type of cancer. There you go, in the purple, these are the memory cells, okay? So get your antigen for your own tumor, prepare it for delivery, inject it in, okay, and it will go destroy the cancer, and some will reside in the lymph nodes for future recurrence of that cancer. Again, I know I'm a bit chiong, hey, but dietary guidelines again for cancer prevention, because why? It's very, very, very important. Because why? Most of you don't eat 5 to 8 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, which where all the antioxidants are, including what? Cauliflower, what cruciferous vegetables, right? That has a sulforaphane, which is anti-cancer properties, right? Choose whole grains instead of refined processed grains and sugar. Limit consumption of red meat, especially processed meats and those high in fat. You know, you all going to eat bakwa, so nice, right? But it is processed. Eat foods that help maintain a healthy weight, okay? And limit salt intake and consume 35 grams of fiber a day. Look, this is a study published in a newspaper, Star Graphics. Fruits and vegetable intake. 95.1% of adults in Malaysia do not consume enough fruits and vegetables. Okay, there are various reasons, high price, insufficient income, blah, 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 all of excuse, but just try to do it, okay? Okay, this is just a chart to summarize a bit of nutritional protection for your body to prevent cancer. What? Cancer, remember I said, starts the process of DNA mutation, and it leads to the oncogenes being activated. So to prevent this activation, make sure you eat enough fruits and vegetables to get antioxidants. Lycopene is good for prostatic cancer, beta carotene, selenium, right? Your immune cells are weakened, and then there's no checking for the cancer. So the initial cancer cells can progress and grow. So things that boost your immune system like propolis, vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and certain proteins, and tissue-specific lycopene is good for prostate cancer, and so is selenium, and fiber to prevent colon cancer. So the rancid meat is not stuck in your colon, right? And for cancer-struck patients, you already got cancer, the nutritional needs of people with cancer vary from patient to patient, and depending on the factors such as the patient's size and age, and whether an individual has experienced significant weight loss, right? 5% of total body weight loss or more due to treatment. Even the chemo also quite tiring for the body. Cancer-struck patients, eating well during cancer therapy can help patients feel better, maintain their strength and energy, maintain their body weight, maintain their body store for essential nutrients to fight their cancer, tolerate the side effects related to treatment, decrease their risk of infection, and improve outcome from treatment. Okay, protein for cancer patients help repair body tissue, maintain the immune system, health, and ensure growth. With insufficient protein, the body's resistance to infection is reduced and recovery from illnesses may take longer. Therefore, cancer patients may require more protein than those without cancer. It's a fact because they need more energy, help, nutritional help. After surgery, radiation therapy or chemotherapy, extra protein is typically needed to mend tissues and to help prevent infections. Carbohydrates and fats, okay, for cancer patients, these nutrients supply the body with the majority of caloric needs. Vitamins and minerals, these nutrients are the basic for proper growth and development and recovery, right? So if you're cancer struck, all this radiation chemotherapy causes a lot of free radicals, and it can activate more oncogenes. So, and again, antioxidants important, depletion of nutrients due to cancer, emaciation, right? You get cachectic. Therefore, you need proteins, right? Your protein needs are high. Protein supplement, aloe vera, spirulina are high in proteins, as well as a lot of nutrients. Weaken immunity, thereby you need immune support, things that will boost up your immunity, like vitamin C, vitamin D, propolis. In summary, cancer may still happen even if we take all the precautions, right? Live correctly. Because why? We live in a sinful world where there are many risk factors that are out of control. Only God knows all the answers, right? But science is recognizing that by living by God's health laws, we will lower our risk for cancer. Thank you.